Think about that. You can't have a republic unless people can speak freely. Will this podcast be censored in Canada? I would wear that as a badge of honor, actually. If Marxist Justin Trudeau gets his way, he will be exactly like his father. Just kidding. We'll talk about that a little bit further into the show. The rumor mill, that I guess conspiracy theorists all throughout the internet believe that Justin Trudeau is the child, actually, of Fidel Castro, which would make sense as to why he is so desperate to control, Canada in such a way and control everybody's thoughts. And all you have to do is look at their faces. And I mean, I'm not, saying that he is, but I'm not saying that he isn't. And we're going to dissect that later on this show, because as a daughter of a Cuban immigrant, I think that this is important. My mother fled Cuba. She fled Fidel Castro. Now we see that his seed may have spread other places throughout the globe. And the reason I bring this up is because yesterday, Glenn Greenwald broke the news that the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission. It just sounds like we're in that movie Brazil, and people are coming up with bureaucracies for the heck of it just to come up with them. Will require that online streaming services that offer podcasts, that they have to register with the government and submit to regulations. Do you see what's happening here? Do you see how we are slowly watching our freedom erode? Do you remember in the United States when they were trying to sneak in the disinformation campaign? Remember that? They were going to set up an organization within the government to do very similar things, to determine whether or not information in podcasts, streaming online, anywhere on social media was disinformation. Governments, folks, governments all throughout the globe, even here in the United States, the biggest disinformation campaigns come from them. And they want to be the ones to determine whether or not we are getting accurate news. That's how crazy and upside down our world is. I'm going to dive into this decision and what it means for Canadians, as well as what it means for us and their speech rights in a moment. But first, we need to thank Allegiance Gold. Thank you, Allegiance Gold. You're amazing, not only with the audience, but with me. And thank you so much for being so great with Sara Carter listeners. Right now, imagine a future where your retirement is protected from the storms of market volatility, folks. And we see that coming. Look at what's happening all across the globe, and look at what's happening right here in our own country with the stock market the way it is. The erosive forces of inflation, recession, government meddling, and the economic uncertainties. Imagine retiring with peace of mind and the freedom to pursue your own dreams. That future, my dear friends, can become your reality, courtesy of Allegiance Gold. And what do I say? Diversify, diversify, diversify. You need to do this. Get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you visit protectwithsara.com today. That's protectwithsara.com today. This is a special offer for Sara Carter listeners. You're not going to want to miss this, right? Get up to $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you visit protectwithsara.com today, or give them a call. Listen to this at 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A. Don't wait. Take control of your retirement today. Call 877-702-7272 and speak with one of their experts. They'll answer all your questions and help you get started on a path to a more secure and prosperous retirement. Time is of the essence. Protect your future with Allegiance Gold. Visit protectwithsara.com or call 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A. The new Canadian regulations. I want to tell you guys what this does. And this is very important. I was in Canada. As you know, I was covering the trucker protest in Ottawa, Canada. And that was during COVID. And this was when truckers basically said, enough is enough. We have a right as Canadians to determine our own medical needs and our own future and not be forced into vaccinations. Forced, because that's what governments were doing. We saw that even in the United States with government workers. And they were told, you can't come to work unless you get, the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine. And this is a major, major issue that has historical precedence. It has historical precedence. It goes all the way back to the Nuremberg trials and what happened with the Jewish population during World War II, when the Nazis basically forced medical procedures that were horrific and horrible and horrifying on the Jewish people. And the United Nations, as well, later, as well as during the Nuremberg trials, there was a promise that people would not be forced into medical procedures by governments, that you have the right to choose, that it is your right as a person to determine your future and your health and what to do with your own body. And we'll bring a doctor on to talk about the details of that. I think that's really important in a future episode and why that's so important, because I think we're not through this fire yet. And we can see this right now in Canada. Well, when I was in Canada, in Ottawa, the protesters were out in the streets, standing in front of Parliament, determined to be a voice for the rest of the world, which to me was amazing. Because here, this is something that the United States, that happens quite often, where we end up speaking up, speaking out, and we stop this horrible chain reaction from going global. In this case, it was really the Canadians, and the Canadians did that, and they were out in the streets. I was out there with them. And what did Marxist Trudeau do? What did Fidel Castro's lookalike do? Well, he seized their bank accounts. And I want you to remember this, because this is so important. This crossed all lines, right? These truckers were saying, I am not going to put the vaccine in my kids. I'm not going to put it in myself. That's my choice. And Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau said he was going to take the unprecedented step to invoking the Emergencies Act to crack down on anti-vaccine mandate protests. Not only did he do that, not only did he crack down on those protests, and we saw what was happening in the streets, and the Canadians that were, the police were out there and there was fighting in the streets, but then he started to seize bank accounts. Even people that were donating money to support the truckers, their bank accounts were being seized. I mean, eventually the banks were like, whoa, 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 we can't keep doing this. And they kind of held Trudeau's feet to the fire, but they went along with it at first. And why is this so important? And why am I bringing this up? Because right now, it didn't end there. They're going even further in Canada now. And so any online streaming service that operates in Canada, which offers broadcasting content and earns more than $10 million a year, must register with the Canadian government. That means American broadcasting services and corporations and social media sites, YouTube and others. These services will also be required to provide the CRTC with information related to their content and subscribership. So, for example, I distribute my podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. All of those platforms make money. And all of those platforms will then have to basically register with the Canadian government. And the implications of this are huge. They're huge. Because this means that the Canadians will basically kind of audit contributions, traditional broadcasters and online streaming services need to make in an effort to support this Canadian service, right? And its Indigenous content. But it's not only going to do that, and I give all the credit to Glenn Greenwald on this, but Glenn Greenwald he brought up a very, very important point. And that was that these online streaming services that offer these podcasts, will now be subject to Canadian rules. And they won't want this podcast out there because I just told you guys that there is a conspiracy theory. And I mean, I don't know about you, but just take a look at the pictures side by side and tell me if you don't think Justin Trudeau is like the exact replica of Fidel Castro as a young man. But look, the reason I'm throwing it out there as a joke and as a conspiracy theory is because why aren't we allowed to talk about stuff anymore? Like, why all of a sudden is the government the end all be all of truth? Like the 1984 memory hole, right? It's like they're going to throw away anything that you question, any questions that you have about the government or their actions. Governments want to drop that into a memory hole. They want to drop history into a memory hole. They don't want you to question anything. And they just want you to follow like lambs to the slaughter, whatever they say. Whatever they say. Because their governments are so truthful, right? So truthful, they would never lie to you. This is what's so upside down about all of this. And I'm going to tell you, it blows my mind that Democrats are okay with this, because I'll go back to the Frank Church hearings and, Frank Church standing up to, the NSA and what happened there. And the fact that it was the Democrats who were holding the rallying cry that the government should not be spying on American citizens, that the government should not be vested in, in what American citizens say in their First Amendment rights to free speech. And now it's like the reversal. Now it's the reversal, which is so weird because you got guys like Rob Reiner that are like, the government's always telling the truth. We've got to support the government. And oh my gosh, give all of our money to Ukraine because, Vladimir Putin's the worst. But the thing is, Rob Reiner and all of these crazy, leftist radicals like Justin Trudeau and all of his friends in Hollywood, they are living the Soviet Union dream. That's what they want. And they're also living the CCP dream, the Chinese Communist Party dream, right? Because the Chinese Communist Party is the expert at this type of censorship. It's like a credit score in China. Like if I was in China, making fun of President Xi Jinping, right? And saying, he's a Marxist and he doesn't give a crap about his people, which he doesn't. And that he is running one of the most authoritarian regimes in the world and targeting the United States and everybody else. Like I probably would end up in a work camp with, people, Uyghurs who have been, beaten, and women who have been sterilized and who are now, living in horrific conditions. And by the way, nobody in the world really stands up for them. None of these governments, because China is a nuclear power and we have a ton of money vested still in China and in manufacturing to our chagrin and mistakes. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I want you to think about the implications of this. If you give the government, if Canada is in control of basically determining, and I'm talking about the Canadian government, not the Canadian people. I think the Canadian people are amazing. I loved them. I loved being out there with them on the front lines and hearing what they said. And it was just such a breath of fresh air to know that Canadians were standing up for their rights, and doing this despite all of the allegations that Canadians are too nice and they're not going to do anything and they're just going to go with the flow. That's not true. People are people, and people will stand up if they are pushed into a corner or if they believe that their rights are being taken from them. And this is mission creep, folks. This is how the government slowly begins to take away your rights, slowly but surely. They want the old dinosaurs to die off, and they want all the young people that they've brainwashed to accept this. That's why history is so important. Real history, true history, not made up, CRT history, but real history and the fight for freedom and what that means. And that comes down to the most essential elements in our Constitution and the founding principles that our forefathers gave us, which is the First Amendment. Why is it the First Amendment? The freedom of free speech, because that, my friends, really is one of the most important in our Constitution, or if I believe the most important. Why? Because you can't have a republic when the people do not have the freedom to speak freely. Think about that. You can't have a republic unless people can speak freely. And you need to put people in office that believe that as well, or you will lose. You will lose your nation. You will lose your ability to speak up. It just blows my mind. Once again, Rob Reiner, all of these crazies and leftists in Hollywood and all these Marxist radicals who think that somehow, they want to be a part of this uniparty of Marxism, lockstep, straight to their own demise. It is okay for people to have different ideas. You know what? I'm not a Marxist, but I'm fine with someone giving a speech on campus about Marxism. I don't care. As long as, Charlie Kirk from Turning Point can go on campus and speak openly as well. I really want you to think about this. And I think Glenn Greenwald, has made a very good point that if we don't start paying attention, that means to not what's only happening in America, but what is happening in the Americas around us. What is going on in Canada will affect us. What is happening in Mexico, obviously, you see, is affecting us. Honduras, Central America, what's going on in the world. We're a global world now. And we have to be very mindful of that. And I think we have to speak up and speak out. You say, why? Who cares about Canada? Canada is, what? Canada is another nation. It's not a part of America. No, but the Canadians are our neighbors. And the people live in a democracy as long as they can keep it. And it is a lesson to us. It is a lesson to us as Americans that if we slowly give away our rights, that mission creep, because we think, oh, it's for the best of this, it's for the best of that. Once we do that, it's almost impossible to get them back. And I'm going to tell you a kind of a funny story of when I was going into Canada to cover the trucking event in Ottawa. It's a funny story of what I said to an immigration officer as I was going through, because I knew the Canadian government was mindful of all the reporters coming through the airport. And so people who were saying, yes, I'm a journalist, were getting pulled aside and asked questions, especially if they were from outlets that the Canadian government didn't like. I said something different when I went through, and I'll be back with that in a moment. But first, HumanN Super Beets. I'm so happy. Super Beets is back. And I take my Super Beets every day. I take 2 every day, and I feel fantastic. I feel great. One of the reasons is I'm traveling so much, and I need all the vitamins I can get and all the energy I can get. And Super Beets really does that for me. In fact, I started taking it, then my husband started taking it, then my cousin started taking it. It's like a family affair now, taking Super Beets. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to feel amazing too. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times, listen to this, more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And that's important to me because my mother had heart disease, and I take that very, very seriously. So I want to do the best for my heart. I want to live a long and healthy life. And that's why I take Super Beets. And I want my family and my husband to as well. So I spread the word. And I want you to be healthy too. So please, please, please give it a try. You're going to love the taste. With my busy schedule, Super Beets chews are a quick and convenient way to do something good for my heart. They taste great and give me peace of mind about my health and overall wellness. They're effective and clinically studied. Super Beets is the #1 pharmacist recommended beet brand for cardiovascular health support, folks. It's blood pressure support you can trust. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code SARA, Sarah. That's getsuperbeets, BEETS.com, code Sara, SARA. So let me go back to a little story about Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau. So let me go back to this story. It's kind of funny. I was on the phone with my husband. He was in my ear pod. I'm going through. My phone is in my bag. I'm cutting through, I'm in Canada. I'm going through the immigration area. And since I'm talking to my husband, I didn't think it was a total fib, but the gentleman at the front is like, well, what are you doing here in Canada? And I said, well, I'm here to meet someone, if you know what I mean. And he was like, what? I go, well, I have a special weekend planned this weekend, if you know what I mean. And my husband's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're actually saying that. And so the Canadian immigration officer was like, oh, okay. He didn't know me. He didn't watch Fox News, I guess. And so he was like, oh, okay, well, have fun this weekend. But every other journalist that went through that was like, I'm here to cover the Canadian protesters or whatever, they got pulled aside. It was like, let's read them the riot act. That goes to show you just how insecure the government was about how the world was viewing their actions on the ground to the truckers. I mean, they allowed media in. Media did come in. We did cover the story. But it was very, very tense. It was very, very tense. And I can tell you that, for the part of the government, a lot of news agencies were not welcome. Others like MSNBC, of course, they were welcome because MSDNC is always going to be on the side of the government. But it's important that we keep government in check, right? That we keep government in check. And it's very, very important right now that we keep the DNC in check. And this crazy administration, which is doing everything to tear our nation apart. So yes, thank you, Glenn Greenwald, for pointing out what Canada is doing and for I believe, for what we see, the extremist actions of government in censoring people's free speech. I appreciate Glenn Greenwald for tweeting that out and drawing attention to that. And we need to keep our eyes on that, folks, because remember, under President Biden, they were going to do the same. And I wouldn't put it past them that they haven't already started something very similar in the government under a different name here in the United States. And that means monitoring people's ability to speak freely. I've seen it happen to us on Twitter, me, others like Sean Hannity, Dan Bongino, anybody with an opinion, anybody that is a newsmaker that they don't agree with, believe me, somebody is watching. And that is unacceptable. This is the United States of America. We need to have faith, and we should have faith in our people, not in our government. Our government works for us. Don't let the government make you afraid. In fact, they should be afraid of you. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show, live from San Diego, California. Such a beautiful, beautiful city. I love it so much, and it's going through some pretty tough times. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless Canada and Justin Castro. And God bless the great state of Texas.